Marcus Cole was not a hero, and he would be the first to tell anyone who asked that simple truth. He was just a man trying to survive in a galaxy that did not care about humans at all. The station called Nexus 7 floated at the edge of known space like a forgotten piece of garbage, and Marcus had called it home for the past 3 years. It was a place where criminals, smugglers, and desperate souls came to disappear, and Marcus fit right in with all of them. He walked through the crowded corridors with his tool bag over his shoulder, ignoring the aliens who towered over him on every side. Most of them looked at humans the way a person might look at an insect, with mild disgust and complete disinterest. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago, and in the eyes of the elder races, humans were nothing more than children stumbling into a room full of adults. They were tolerated but never respected, and Marcus had learned to accept that bitter reality long ago tonight. He was heading to the old docking bay where a derelict ship had been towed in for salvage. The work was dangerous and the pay was terrible, but it kept food in his stomach and fuel in his ship. The bay was dark when Marcus arrived, with only a few flickering lights casting shadows across the rusted walls. He activated his flashlight and climbed through the broken airlock of the abandoned vessel, searching for anything valuable that he could sell. He was 3 rooms deep into the ship when he heard the scream. Marcus froze in place, his heart pounding against his ribs. Screams were common on Nexus 7, and smart people learned to ignore them because getting involved meant getting killed. But this scream was different somehow. It was filled with terror and pain, and something deep inside Marcus refused to let him walk away. Followed the sound through the dark corridors until he reached a cargo hold at the center of the ship. What he saw there made his blood turn cold. 4 figures in black armor surrounded a woman who was pressed against the far wall. She had silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and her violet eyes were wide with fear as blood dripped from a wound on her. Armed assassins moved closer to her with weapons drawn, speaking in a language Marcus did not understand. But he understood their intent perfectly well, and they were going to kill her. Marcus knew he should run away because this was not his fight and not his problem. He was just a salvager with no combat training and no special abilities, and getting involved would almost certainly get him killed. But humans had a strange quality that the other races of the galaxy never seemed to understand. They formed attachments to strangers. They felt compelled to help those in need, and they often did incredibly stupid things for people they had never met before. Marcus reached into his tool bag and pulled out a plasma cutter and 3 emergency flares. It was not much of an arsenal, but it would have to do. He took a deep breath and then threw the flares into the center of the room. They exploded with blinding light, and the assassins stumbled backward in confusion, and Marcus charged forward before he could change his mind. He slammed his plasma cutter into the back of the nearest assassin, and the alien dropped to the ground with a horrible sound. The other 3 turned toward him with murder in their eyes. Marcus ducked under a blade that would have taken his head off and kicked the second assassin in what he hoped was a knee joint. The woman with silver skin was not helpless despite her wounds. She grabbed the fallen weapon and fired at the 3rd assassin, dropping him instantly with a blast of blue energy. The 4th assassin looked at his fallen comrades and then at Marcus and the woman. He seemed to calculate his odds for a moment before turning and running into the darkness of the ship. Marcus wanted to chase him, but his legs were shaking too badly to move. He had never killed anyone before tonight, and the reality of what he had just done crashed over him like a wave. The silver-skinned woman approached him slowly with the weapon still in her hand. Up close she was even more striking, with delicate features and those incredible violet eyes that seemed to look straight through him. "You saved me," she said in perfect English, her voice filled with something that sounded like wonder. "Why would you do such a thing when you do not even know who I am?" Marcus shrugged because he did not have a good answer. It seemed like the right thing to do, and I've always been bad at minding my own business. The woman studied him for a long moment before lowering her weapon. I am Princess Vyra Kelsothar, third daughter of the Emperor of the Velthoran Empire, and I owe you a debt that cannot be measured. Marcus felt his stomach drop because he recognized that name. The Velthoran Empire controlled over 1,000 star systems, and their military could crush Earth without breaking a sweat. A princess, he said weakly. Of course you are a princess, because my luck has always been absolutely terrible. Vyra almost smiled at his words. Your luck may be worse than you know, human. Those assassins were sent by my own family, and by saving me, you have made yourself a target as well. Marcus closed his eyes and wondered what he had done to deserve this. Let me guess. The whole empire is going to come looking for us now. Yes, Vyra replied with a grim expression. My brother Vorath is staging a coup against my father, and he needs all the heirs dead before he can claim the throne. The assassins will report your face, and soon every hunter in the galaxy will know your name. Marcus thought about his small ship and his empty bank account and his complete lack of combat skills. He thought about Earth and his family and everything he would lose if he stayed with this woman. But when he looked into her violet eyes, he saw fear and desperation and a tiny spark of hope that he had put there. Walking away now would be the same as killing her himself. Then Marcus knew he could not live with that. All right, princess, he said with a sigh that came from deep in his soul. I guess we better get moving before more of your friends show up. Vyra tilted her head in confusion. You will help me even knowing the danger you face? Marcus grabbed his tool bag and headed for the door. Humans do stupid things all the time, and this is probably the stupidest thing I have ever done. But my mother always said that the measure of a person is how they treat those who cannot help them back. He did not see the expression on Vyra's face as she followed him out of the cargo hold. It was a mixture of confusion and something that might have been respect. And in that moment, she began to understand why this small and fragile species had survived so long in such a dangerous galaxy. They had something that the elder races had lost long ago, and it was called compassion. The Reclaimer was not much to look at, and Marcus knew it better than anyone. It was an old cargo ship held together by spare parts and desperate prayers, with rust on the hull and cracks in the viewport that he had patched a dozen times, but it was his ship and his home. And right now, it was carrying him away from Nexer 7 at the fastest speed its tired engines could manage ever. Sat in the co-pilot seat with her wounded arm wrapped in bandages that Marcus had found in his emergency kit. She had not spoken much since they left the station, and Marcus could tell that she was thinking about something important. So, he said, as he adjusted their course toward the Outer Rim territories, you want to tell me exactly how much trouble I am in right now? Vyra turned to look at him with those violet eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. You saved my life, Marcus Cole, and among my people that creates a bond called Kethvora. That sounds serious. Marcus replied with a frown. It is the most sacred bond in our culture, Vyra explained in a soft voice. A life debt that binds my soul to yours until I have repaid what you have given me. It is considered unbreakable by divine law, and I am now honor-bound to protect you and serve your interests until the debt is cleared. Marcus stared at her for a long moment before shaking his head. I do not want a servant or a bodyguard or whatever this is. I just saw someone in trouble and decided to help. That is what makes this so confusing to me, Vyra admitted with a puzzled expression. Among my people, no one helps strangers without expecting something in return. The concept of selfless kindness does not exist in Velthoran culture. Marcus laughed, even though nothing was funny. Well, humans are famous for doing things that do not make sense. And I guess saving alien princesses from assassins is just another item on that list. Comfortable silence fell between them as the ship traveled through the darkness of space. Marcus used this time to check the communication channels, and what he found made his heart sink. We have a problem, he said as he pulled up the bounty listings on his screen. Actually, we have about 50,000 problems, because that is how many credits they are offering for your capture. Vire leaned forward to look at the screen, and her face grew pale. They have also listed your face alongside mine. You are now considered a co-conspirator in crimes against the Empire. Great, Marcus muttered under his breath. I went from salvager to galactic criminal in one night. The bounty listing showed more than just their faces. It also showed that Earth had been flagged as a world harboring Imperial fugitives, and Marcus felt a cold fear grip his chest. They are threatening my planet, he said with anger rising in his voice. My family lives on Earth, and your brother is using them as leverage against me. Vire placed a hand on his arm with a gentle touch. I am sorry for bringing this trouble to your doorstep. If you wish to hand me over to the authorities, I would not blame you for making that choice. Marcus looked at her hand on his arm and then at her face. She was being sincere, and she fully expected him to abandon her now that he understood the true cost of his kindness. Let me tell you something about humans, he said with a fierce determination in his eyes. We do not abandon people who need our help, not ever, not for any reason. My grandmother used to say that loyalty is not loyalty if it disappears when things get hard. Vire seemed stunned by his words. You would risk your entire world for a stranger? I would risk everything for the chance to be a person I can respect, Marcus replied as he turned back to the controls. Now tell me everything about your brother and his plan, because we need to figure out how to stop him. Vire nodded slowly and began to explain the situation in greater detail. Prince Vorath was the eldest son of the Emperor, but Veltharan law did not automatically give the throne to the firstborn child. Instead, the Emperor would choose the most worthy heir from among his children. Their father had grown sick in recent months, and Vorath feared that another sibling would be chosen. So he had decided to eliminate his competition before the decision could be made. 3 of my brothers and 2 of my sisters have already died in suspicious accidents, Vire said with pain in her voice. I was supposed to be next, but you interfered with their plan. Marcus felt sick at the thought of someone killing their own family for power. And your father does not suspect anything? The Emperor is surrounded by Vorath's allies, Vire explained. The Shroud, our intelligence network, has been corrupted from within. My father sees only what Vorath wants him to see. Their conversation was interrupted by a beeping sound from the communication console. Marcus answered the call, and the face of a 4-armed alien appeared on the screen. Dresk, Marcus said with relief. I was hoping you would answer. Dresk was a smuggler whom Marcus had worked with many times over the years. He was ugly by human standards, with green-scaled skin and too many teeth. But he was also one of the few aliens who treated Marcus with genuine respect. I heard you got yourself into trouble, Dresk said with a rumbling voice. The bounty on your head is making waves across the sector, and I wanted to warn you about something. Marcus leaned forward with concern. Warn me about what? The Pale Blade has taken the contract on your princess, Dresk replied with fear in his eyes. He is the most dangerous hunter in the entire Empire, and no one has ever escaped him once he starts tracking them. Vire drew in a sharp breath at the mention of that name. Marcus could see that she recognized it, and her reaction told him everything he needed to know about how much danger they were facing. His name is Commander Sathos, Vire whispered. He has served my family for 300 years, and he has never failed to complete a mission. Marcus wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. He was just a human salvager with a broken ship and no real weapons. And now the greatest hunter in the galaxy was coming for them, but giving up was not something humans did very well. It was coded into their DNA to keep fighting even when victory seemed impossible. Then I guess we better make sure we're somewhere else when he arrives, Marcus said as he pushed the engines to maximum power. The ship shuddered and groaned as it accelerated into hyperspace. Behind them, the darkness of normal space fell away, replaced by the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel. Somewhere out there, the pale blade was hunting for them. But Marcus Cole had survived poverty and war, and the cold indifference of a galaxy that wanted him dead. He was not going to give up now, not when someone was counting on him to keep fighting. The shattered expanse was a graveyard of ancient warships that stretched across 3 star systems. Massive vessels from a war fought 10,000 years ago floated in the darkness like sleeping giants. Their hulls torn open and their weapons silent forever, Marcus had brought the reclaimer here hoping that the debris field would hide them from their pursuer. It was a desperate plan. But desperate plans were the only kind he had left. The sensor readings are confused by all the metal around us, he said as he guided the ship through a narrow gap between 2 destroyed cruisers. Maybe that will buy us some time to figure out our next move. Virae watched the dead ships pass by their viewport with a haunted expression. These vessels belonged to the Keth Ori, a species that challenged the Veltharan Empire long before humans discovered fire. My ancestors destroyed them completely. That is a cheerful thought, Marcus replied with dark humor. Remind me not to challenge your empire anytime soon. They had been running for 3 days now, and exhaustion was starting to take its toll on both of them. Marcus had barely slept because every time he closed his eyes, he imagined the pale blade finding them. Virae noticed the dark circles under his eyes and frowned. You need to rest, Marcus. I can watch the sensors while you sleep. I am fine. He lied with a stubbornness that was typically human. Besides, you're still healing from that wound on your arm. My wound is minor compared to your exhaustion. She argued back. You have given me your food rations, your bed, and your waking hours. Why do you sacrifice so much for someone you barely know? Marcus did not have a good answer for that question. I guess it is just how I was raised. My parents always told me that taking care of others is more important than taking care of yourself. Virae shook her head in bewilderment. Your species is truly strange. No Veltharan would ever put the needs of a stranger above their own comfort. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm, blaring through the ship. Marcus looked at his sensors and felt his blood turn to icy sleek. Black vessel had dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of them. It was beautiful in the way the predators are beautiful, all sharp angles and deadly grace. He found us, Virae whispered with terror in her voice. The pale blade has found us. Marcus pushed the engines to maximum, but it was already too late. A beam of blue energy shot from the hunter ship and struck the reclaimer's engines. And suddenly they were drifting without power. He is disabling us, not destroying us, Marcus realized as he frantically tried to restart the systems. He wants to take us alive. The black ship moved alongside them with predatory patience. Marcus heard the sound of an airlock connecting, and then footsteps echoing through his vessel. Commander Sathus was tall even by Veltharan standards, with pale gray skin and eyes that burned like white fire. He wore armor that seemed to absorb the light around him, and he carried a blade that hummed with deadly energy. Princess Virae, he said in a voice like silk over steel. Your brother sends his regards and his regrets. Virae stepped forward with her chin held high. You serve a traitor, Sathus. Morath murdered our siblings and corrupted the Shroud. Politics are not my concern. The hunter replied without emotion. I was given a contract, and I will fulfill it. He turned his burning gaze toward Marcus. And you, little human. You have caused quite a bit of trouble for someone so insignificant. Marcus knew he could not defeat this creature in a straight fight. Sathus was faster and stronger, and had centuries of combat experience that Marcus could never match, but humans had survived on Earth by being clever rather than powerful. They had hunted mammoths with nothing but sharpened sticks and determination. And Marcus Cole was not about to give up now. Maybe we should talk about this, he said while slowly moving toward the engineering panel on the wall. I am sure we can work something out, Sathis smiled with cold amusement. "There is nothing to discuss, human. You will both die, and I will collect my payment. That is too bad," Marcus said, as his hand found the emergency override switch. "Because I was really hoping you would say that." He pulled the switch, and every system on the ship went haywire at once. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and a shower of sparks erupted from the ceiling directly above Sathos. The hunter recoiled in surprise, and Marcus used that moment to throw himself at the larger alien. It was a ridiculous attack that should have failed immediately, but Sathos had not expected a human to be so foolishly brave. Marcus grabbed the energy blade and pulled it toward himself rather than away. The movement was counterintuitive, and it caused Sathis to lose his grip for just a second. That second was all Marcus needed. He twisted the blade around and drove the hilt into the side of the hunter's head with every ounce of strength. He possessed Sathos staggered but did not fall. He backhanded Marcus across the corridor with casual violence, and Marcus crashed into the wall hard enough to see stars. "Impressive," the hunter admitted as he retrieved his blade. "You have more fight in you than I expected from your species. But this ends now." Vire stepped between them with her hand raised. "I invoke the trial by imperial witness. By ancient law, you must bring us before the Emperor alive, and you cannot refuse this sacred right." Sathis froze in place with his blade hovering inches from Marcus's throat. A long moment passed before he finally lowered the weapon. "You know the old ways," he said with what might have been respect. "Very well, princess. I will take you to Velther Prime, and you will face the Emperor's judgment." He looked down at Marcus with something new in his burning eyes. "You fought like a creature with nothing to lose, human. I have never seen such reckless courage from any species." Marcus groaned as he pulled himself to his feet. "Thanks, I guess, although I would prefer it if you had just let us go." Sathis almost laughed at that. "The trial will likely end with your death. But at least you will die on the throne world rather than in this graveyard." As they were escorted to the hunter's ship, Vire whispered to Marcus with gratitude in her voice, "You bought us time. That is more than anyone has ever done against the Pale Blade." Marcus looked at her and managed a weak smile despite his bruised ribs and throbbing head. "Humans are stubborn like that. We do not know when to quit." The hunter walked behind them, watching the human with a curiosity he had not felt in centuries. There was something about this small, fragile creature that defied everything. Sathis thought he knew about the galaxy. Perhaps the elder races had underestimated humanity for too long. Velther Prime was the most beautiful world Marcus had ever seen. Vast cities of crystal and silver stretched toward clouds that glowed with colors humans had no names for, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with an energy that made his skin tingle. But Marcus could not enjoy the beauty because he was walking toward what would likely be his death. Sathis led them through the Imperial Palace, a structure so massive that it could have held entire Earth cities within its walls. Guards in gleaming armor watched them pass with expressions of contempt and curiosity. Word had spread that a human had dared to challenge the Empire, and everyone wanted to see the fool who had signed his own death warrant. The throne room was larger than any space Marcus had ever entered. Pillars of pure crystal rose toward a ceiling painted with images of Volvaran conquests. And at the far end sat the Emperor on a throne carved from a single black diamond. Emperor Kelithkel was ancient beyond human understanding, with silver skin that had faded to almost white and eyes that held the weight of 1,000 years. It radiated power the way a sun radiates light, and Marcus felt himself trembling just from being in his presence. Beside the throne stood Prince Vorath, and Marcus understood immediately why Vire feared her brother so much. Vorath had the cold beauty of a blade, with perfect features twisted by ambition and cruelty into something almost demonic. "Father," Vorath said with a voice like poison wrapped in silk, "your wayward daughter has returned. along with the human vermin who helped her escape justice. The Emperor raised one withered hand, and Vorath fell silent immediately. Those ancient eyes turned toward Marcus, and the human felt as if his very soul was being examined. "You are small," the Emperor observed with a voice that echoed through the vast chamber. "And your species is young and weak. Yet you defied my empire and survived the Pale Blade. Tell me, human, why should I not have you executed where you stand?" Marcus swallowed hard, but refused to look away from those terrifying eyes. "Because your daughter is innocent, and your son is a murderer who killed his own siblings to steal your throne." Gasps echoed through the throne room, and Vorath's face twisted with rage. "This creature lies, father. He is trying to save himself with desperate accusations. I speak the truth," Marcus continued with a courage he did not feel. "Vyri has evidence that Vorath orchestrated the deaths of his brothers and sisters, and he corrupted the Shroud to hide his crimes from you." The Emperor studied Marcus for a long moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Perhaps both." He turned to look at Sathos. "What say you, Pale Blade? You have observed this human during your journey here." Sathos stepped forward and bowed deeply before speaking. "The human is unlike any creature I have encountered. He refused to sleep so the princess could rest. He gave her his food even when he was starving. And he fought me with nothing but his bare hands and his refusal to surrender. He did all this for a stranger." The hunter continued with wonder in his voice. An alien he had never met before. "I do not understand his motivations, but I cannot deny his courage." The Emperor leaned back on his throne with something that might have been interest. "Fascinating. Very well, human. I invoke the outsider's trial. If you survive 3 challenges, your life and the princess's life will be spared." Vorath stepped forward with alarm on his face. "Father, this is unnecessary. The human should simply be executed." "I have made my decision," the Emperor replied with finality. The trial begins at dawn. Marcus spent the night in a cell that was nicer than most apartments he had lived in. Vyri was held elsewhere, but Sathos came to speak with him as the hours passed. "The challenges are designed to test strength, intellect, and will," the hunter explained. "They are meant for Veltharan warriors, not humans, so I am going to die." Marcus said flatly, "Probably," Sathos admitted. "But I have seen what you are capable of when pushed to your limits. Perhaps you will surprise everyone again." The first challenge came with the dawnlight. Marcus faced a Veltharan champion 3 times his size in an arena filled with thousands of watching eyes. The champion expected to defeat the human quickly, but Marcus had no intention of trading blows with a creature that could tear him apart. Instead, he ran and dodged and kept moving, forcing the larger alien to chase him around the arena. Hours passed, and the champion began to slow. Veltharans were built for explosive power, not endurance. And Marcus had spent years doing hard physical labor on frontier worlds when the champion finally collapsed through exhaustion. The crowd fell silent in disbelief. A human had won by refusing to fight the way his opponent expected. The second challenge tested intellect through a strategic war simulation. Marcus faced a Veltharan general who had never lost a game in 3 centuries. The general played perfectly, making optimal moves that any logical being would make. But Marcus did something illogical, sacrificing his strongest pieces in a move that made no strategic sense. The general could not understand why a human would throw away his advantages, and that confusion caused him to make mistakes. Marcus won the game through unpredictability rather than skill. The final challenge tested will through a psychic endurance machine that attacked the mind with waves of despair and pain. Veltharan warriors prided themselves on their disciplined thoughts, their perfectly ordered minds, but human minds were different. They were chaotic and emotional, and filled with irrational hopes and random memories. The machine could not find a pattern to attack because Marcus had no pattern, He survived by letting his thoughts flow like water, moving from memories of his mother's cooking to the smell of rain on Earth to the look in Vera's eyes when she thanked him. His mind was a storm that could not be broken because it was never rigid in the first place. When Marcus emerged from the final challenge, battered but alive, the arena erupted into chaos. No outsider had ever completed the trial before of Earth, screamed in fury, and drew a hidden blade. "I will not be denied my throne by a worthless human." He lunged toward Marcus, but a silver blade intercepted him. Satha stood between the prince and the human, his weapon humming with deadly intent. "The trial is complete," the hunter declared. "Touch him again, and I will kill you myself." Moreth's guards moved to help their master, but the Emperor's voice cut through the chaos like thunder. "Enough. My son has revealed his true nature before all the court." Guards loyal to the Emperor surrounded Vareth, and the prince's face went white with terror as he realized his coup had failed. He fled through a hidden passage. Before anyone could stop him, the Emperor rose from his throne with difficulty, his ancient body failing at last. "Princess Virae, you have proven your worth through your choice of allies. I name you my successor." He looked at Marcus with something that might have been admiration. "And you, human? You have shown my people something they had forgotten. That courage and compassion are more valuable than power and perfection." Marcus stood in the center of the greatest empire in the galaxy, and for the first time, he felt like he truly belonged among the stars. 6 months had passed as Marcus Cole stood in the throne room of the Veltharan Empire, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Empress Virae Kalsutho sat on the Black Diamond throne now, and her first acts as ruler had sent shockwaves through known space. She disbanded the corrupt elements of the Shroud, outlawed assassination as a political tool, and opened diplomatic channels with Earth. Humanity was no longer seen as an insignificant species to be ignored. The story of the human who had defied an empire had spread to every corner of the galaxy, and suddenly everyone wanted to know more about these strange, persistent creatures. Marcus could have stayed on Velthar Prime as an honored guest, living in luxury for the rest of his days. Virae had offered him titles and wealth and a position in her new government, but he had turned down every offer. He stood in the hangar bay of the Imperial Palace with his bag over his shoulder, looking at the Reclaimer with fondness despite all its flaws. The ship had been repaired with Veltharan technology, but Marcus had made sure they kept the original rust and dents, because they told the story of where he had been. Virae came to see him before he left, her silver skin glowing softly in the artificial light. She no longer wore the simple clothes of a fugitive, and her imperial robes made her look like the ruler she had become. "You could stay," she said with a softness that surprised him. "There's much work to be done, and I could use your counsel." Marcus smiled at her with genuine warmth. "You do not need me to tell you how to be a good leader. You already know the answer to that question." "And what answer is that?" she asked. "Treat people the way you want to be treated," he replied. "Help those who cannot help themselves, and never forget what it felt like to be afraid and alone. That is all the wisdom I have to offer." Virae stepped forward and took his hand in hers. Her touch was cool and smooth, and Marcus felt his heart beat faster despite his best efforts to remain calm. "The Kethvora remains," she said quietly. "I owe you a life debt that I have not yet repaid." "Consider it repaid," Marcus told her. "You gave my species a future among the stars, and that is worth more than anything else you could offer me." She looked into his eyes for a long moment before slowly nodding. "You are a strange man, Marcus Cole. Perhaps the strangest I have ever known. I am human," he replied with a shrug. "Strange is what we do best." He climbed into his ship and fired up the engines, lifting off from the palace hangar and ascending through the clouds of Velthar Prime. The planet shrank behind him as he entered orbit, and then he engaged the hyperspace drive, and the stars blurred into streaks of light, The reclaimer carried him to the outer rim territories where he felt most at home. He returned to his old life of salvage and exploration. Although now the jobs came easier because everyone knew his Namdresk was waiting for him at a station in the frontier sector with 4 arms crossed and a toothy grin on his scaled face. The famous Marcus Cole returns to slum with us common folk. I am honored. Shut up, Marcus said with a laugh as he embraced his old friend. I am still the same broke salvager I have always been. You are many things, Dresk replied, but broke is no longer one of them. Do you know how many people want to hire the man who saved the Veltharan princes? They drank together in a dirty bar on the edge of known space, and Marcus listened to the gossip that flowed through the criminal underworld. Most of it was meaningless noise, but one name kept coming up over and over again. Prince Vorath had not been captured when he fled from the palace. Instead, he had gathered loyalists in the outer territories and was building a fleet to challenge his sister's rule. Worse yet, Vorath had discovered something dangerous. Ancient coordinates that led to a vault built by the precursors. The mysterious species that had ruled the galaxy before any current civilization existed. Whatever weapons lay in that vault could give Vorath the power to destroy everything Virae had built. Marcus felt a cold dread settle into his chest as he realized the fight was not over. His communicator beeped with an incoming message, and when he answered it, Virae's face appeared on the small screen. She looked tired and worried, and Marcus knew immediately that she had heard the same rumors. Marcus, she said, with relief in her voice. I was hoping you would answer. I heard about Vorath, he replied. And the precursor vault? She nodded with a grim expression. My intelligence suggests he is close to finding it. If he acquires those weapons, my fleet will not be able to stop him. Marcus knew what she was going to ask before she said the words. Part of him wanted to refuse, to stay safe in the outer rim where no one expected anything from him. But another part of him remembered the terror in her eyes when he first found her, and the hope that replaced it when he refused to abandon her. Some debts could never truly be repaid, and Marcus understood that now. I cannot command you to help me, Virae continued, and I cannot repay my debt if you die out there alone. Marcus smiled at the irony of her words. You are trying to protect me by invoking the debt I told you to forget. Perhaps, she admitted. Or perhaps I am simply asking a friend for help. The word friend hit Marcus harder than he expected. In all his years wandering the galaxy, he had never truly felt like he belonged anywhere. But somehow this alien empress had become the closest thing to family he had left. Send me the coordinates, he said with a determination that surprised even himself. And tell Sathus to meet me there. We are going to need his skills. Virae's face lit up with gratitude and relief. Thank you, Marcus. I knew I could count on you. Humans are predictable like that, he replied. Give us something worth fighting for, and we will never stop. He ended the call and began plotting a course for the coordinates Virae had sent. The Reclaimer's engines hummed with renewed purpose as the ship entered hyperspace once again. Marcus looked out at the stars streaming past his viewport and felt something he had not felt in years. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. The galaxy had tried to kill him, to crush him, to make him feel small and insignificant. But Marcus Cole was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. That was what it meant to be human. Not the technology or the intelligence or the physical abilities, but the stubborn, irrational refusal to accept defeat. Somewhere out there, Vorath was plotting his revenge. Somewhere out there, ancient weapons waited to be awakened. Somewhere out there, the future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Marcus Cole was heading straight into the heart of the storm, because that was what heroes did. Even the accidental ones who never asked for the job. He thought about Earth and his family and all the humans who would never know his name. He was fighting for them too, for the chance to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The reclaimer shot through hyperspace toward an uncertain future, and Marcus smiled despite the danger. For the first time in his life, he knew exactly who he was and what he was meant to do. He was the human among stars. And the galaxy had better learn to deal with that.